Dads of Reddit, what's your best don't tell your mother about this moment? My kids are jerks. I have tried the don't tell mom thing on small things that would be easy to get away with, but they are terrible with secrets. Mom, Dad, let us do this after you said no. I get yelled at a lot. Lol. Not a dad myself, but one time me and my dad were messing around and he kicked my bedroom door down by accident. We rushed to the hardware store, fixed it by the time my mom got home. Never told her once. To this day she hasn't noticed anything off about it. I'm the son, but my dad let me build a bike jump in the yard when I was younger. He then told us it would be a lot cooler if there was a fire pit we jumped over. We ended up digging a little trench and using his lawnmower gas. He lit it as 3 of my friends lined up with me to hit it. Was an unspoken understanding that this was not going to be shared with any of the moms. I actually am a dad to 4, but my kids are young and we haven't had one of these moments yet. This is about something I did when I was about 10ish. I very much enjoyed checking out the models on bikini.com. There was one model that I thought was the most beautiful woman in the world. I wrote her an email telling her in explicit detail how great I thought she was. A couple weeks later I received a package in the mail. Inside was a hand-signed photo of her and one of her friends, also a model on the site. A very nice polo shirt with the website's logo on it. A mouse pad and some other stuff I can't remember. My dad found and opened the package while I was at school. He thought it was hilarious and promised not to tell my mom. Mine was when I took my kids to a country fair. As the event was so busy, the people running it had opened up fields close by as overspill parking. On exiting the overspill car park, I thought it would be fun to drive across the fields at speed. While doing this I hit something in the field and proceeded to go up on 2 wheels. It felt like a very long time we were on 2 wheels and I don't know why we didn't tip over onto the roof, but we didn't and eventually landed back on 4 wheels. My kids thought it was the most amazing thing ever. I personally aged about 10 years. It was the closest I've ever been to soiling myself and spent the whole way home driving like an old woman and thinking how I would have explained that on exiting a car park I ended up with my car on its roof. My older kid loves Chick-fil-A. Loves it. Mom is not a fan of the kids eating there because one time he and his sister had a late Chick-fil-A dinner. All the salt made them thirsty and both kids drank tons of water and both wet the bed that night. So of course when my wife goes out of town with our daughter, I take him to Chick-fil-A and we have the don't tell mom conversation. But then I'm thinking, hey, I want to make sure he gets the difference between this kind of secret and other kinds of secrets. So I talked to him about how no matter who asks you to keep a secret, it's always okay to tell your own parents, etc, and you would never get in trouble. So fast forward a couple months and mom says something about Chick-fil-A and how long it's been since he's eaten there. And he just nonchalantly says the last time was a secret time with daddy. So busted. I walked right into that, but for the right reasons. I made a rocket and took it to the park with my son. It was more powerful than I imagined and wasn't balanced well. I lit it. The rocket flew a few hundred meters in the air before it started arcing downwards. I sort of lost sight of it shortly afterwards and did the responsible thing. I grabbed the kid and ran away. On the drive home, the radio reported that a firework had entered a hall where some crinkly senior citizens were learning how to waltz or summit and had struck and knocked over a table holding a selection of sandwiches and cakes. The lady on the radio informed me that no one was hurt, but that the police and fire services were on the scene. My son looked at me dead in the eye and told me I was an idiot. He was 7 years old. I had to buy him several new video games and a hat to keep it on the down low. When we got home, the wife asked how our rocket had worked out. I lied and told her it didn't work and that it didn't lift off, so I threw it in the bin. The next day at breakfast she had the paper neatly folded in front of her, with the fireworks story face up. She didn't say anything. She just ducking stared at me with that look all over her face for like 20 minutes. But I pretended not to notice and ate more toast ducking, lol. Kid here. Once, shortly after my father got his first cell phone, I was in the car with just him. Suddenly his phone rings, and it's just making this annoying clucking chicken sound. He'd rigged a custom ringtone for my mother's cell. Yeah, I was never allowed to tell her about that. My son fell about 15 feet at the playground. landing flat on his back. It knocked the wind out of him, and he was scared, but completely unharmed. I knew she would be terrified and worry about a concussion, and likely not let him play on that apparatus in the future. I calmed him down, ran through some quick questions to evaluate for head injury, and brushed him off. He was back at the top before she even turned around to notice. I remember I was sick one day and my mom said if you're too sick to go to school then you're too sick to play video games. Which makes no ducking sense lol. After she left for work my dad came in and told me I could play video games as long as I didn't tell my mom. It ended up being pretty awesome cause there was some type of flu going around the school, so I had 5 other friends that were sick too and we had a full team on COD and we played all day. Not mine but on behalf of a friend. We played GTA together while his daughter was playing on the floor. I was a bit unsure it was a good idea but she was young and we didn't think she'd absorb any of it. Skip ahead a few weeks to when she starts kindergarten and is playing on the playground. She immediately runs for the boy playing in the plastic toy car, a sit-in one with doors that you move by walking your feet through a hole in the bottom. She runs to it, opens the door and pulls the boy out of it. CJ style. We play games when she isn't there now. Not a dad but something my dad did. When I was 13 my dad was forced to sell his 86 Grand National due to being laid off for several months. That car was his pride and joy. The night before he sold it we took it to get a car wash and as we're about to head back home he tosses me the key saying there's no better time to learn how to drive. After the basic which pedal does what he talked me into opening it up to 70 miles per hour on some side streets before we got too close to the house and had to switch seats so my mom wouldn't find out. Coolest experience of my childhood. Edit. Spelling. When my little sister and I were young, we were home alone with my dad. I guess we had been suspiciously quiet. So he poked his head out of his office and found us under the kitchen table playing lotion with a jar of peanut butter. We were just sitting there under the table spreading peanut butter all over our arms and legs. Lol. My dad, he has a pretty good sense of humor, decided to go get the video camera, one of those old giant ones that used a full-sized VHS tape, instead of telling us to stop. And in the video I turn and look dead into the camera and earnestly say don't tell mom. It's pretty awesome because I was so young that I don't have a clear memory of it. I've just seen the video enough times that I have like an artificial memory of it, and it's one of my favorites. I'm divorced and my ex and I co-parent 2 toddlers, young children 6 and 4 years old. She's quite religious, Catholic, and I am not. This past spring, after talking it over with his mom and unbeknownst to me, our 6-year-old decided to give up chocolate for Lent. One weekend, when the kids were with me, I made chocolate chip cookies for them. 6 had one after dinner and, after he happily scarfed it down, he confessed to me that he was not supposed to have chocolate until Lent was over. I explained to him that it was okay, everyone makes mistakes, etc. and told him that we could keep it a secret and not tell his mom. Fast forward to when I drop them off with their mom. They get out of the car and the first thing my 4-year-old says to their mom is dad gave 6 a chocolate chip cookie. That little snitch didn't say a peep about that cookie all weekend. He just logged it away and knew he was going to rat out his dad and his brother the first chance he got. Edit. It's been pointed out to me that, at ages 6 and 4, my kids aren't really toddlers anymore. I hadn't even considered that, but I agree. Time really does fly. I'm just so used to calling them toddlers. It's hard to believe they're already out of that category. They're still my little babies to me. My dad accidentally played porn on the living room TV. With my own dad the rule was, if mom's not there to see the pizza delivered, it was never ordered. Fed my dog the rest of my hot dog the other day. He ducking loved it, and he can't tell anybody a goddamn thing. As far as mommy knows, nothing happened. That's how we like it. My family owns a company that builds parts for race cars, and naturally we also race. Well, dad and I do. About 8-9 years ago when I was around 14 or so we were headed out of state to my cousin's wedding. While on a long straight stretch without warning, dad floored his Camaro and we ended up somewhere north of 100 miles per hour. Granted that's not too crazy, but at 14 it was one of the coolest thing me and dad had ever done and it was a really cool bonding experience for us. Being that my mom is pretty overprotective, dad cleared his GPS memory and told me it was between us. Not a dad, but I did fall out of my dad's car one time. My mom was a nurse, so she was working Christmas Eve. My dad took me, my older brother, and my older sister around the neighborhood to put out luminaries. Long story short, he had us all sitting on the open trunk hatch on his SUV. I was in the middle. My brother and sister were on the outside. He was being around and decided that he was going to pop the clutch. He told my brother and sister to hold on to me. So when he floored it, I fell out. I rolled like 10 feet after I fell out. My mom didn't find out for years. Not my story per se. A few years back, me and a buddy are in IKEA. There's this dad in front of us online in the food area. He has 3 kids. A toddler old enough to stand next to him. Another toddler he's carrying and a newborn in a carriage. Mind you, he's trying to grab 4/5 meals and he had these 2 kids tugging at him. I guess his mind blanks and he moves on while leaving the baby in the carriage to stare at me and my buddy. We look at the baby and then him, and the baby is just staring at us like what the duck. This guy pays and is slowly walking off. Me. Hey sir. Father turns around. I point at the baby and we all look at him. Father, our duck. Please don't tell my wife. He grabs the kid and dips. Lol. Son who was told not to tell mom. I was about 8 going with my dad for the day to his Navy Reserve Center with him. He was a chief and was in uniform. About halfway through the drive there is a truck starts riding our tail, eventually passing us. 2-lane highway. As this guy passes he flips off my dad, presumably for driving too slow. This was rural Missouri and my dad didn't appreciate that too much, so he follows the truck about 5 miles off the highway in the wrong direction. The truck pulls over and my dad says to stay there. I was in the front seat and I get really nervous as this other driver gets out and is 6'4", 350 pounds and just looms over my dad. My dad walks right up to him unfazed by this and dresses the guy down for acting like that. The driver apologized and gets back in his truck. As my dad gets into the car he takes a deep breath then says, "That was the stupidest thing I have ever done." Not a dad, but my psycho ex-stepmom was vegan and so restrictive about food she locked it up. My dad would get home from work with donuts and wake me and my brother up to eat them while watching laugh-in or reruns of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Actually my dad's moment. He used to chop wood for the fire, and one day I thought I would like to help. So he set up some wood on the block and showed me how to hold the axe. I lifted the axe and brought it down hard, whereupon it missed both the wood and the block easily, and fortunately also missed my tender little foot by the barest whisker. My dad and I just looked at each other. He didn't have to actually say the words, but that was definitely the end of my lumberjack aspirations. My 3-year-old grandson fell and hurt knee while at park with his dad. Knee was bleeding and to get grandson's attention off hurt son asked him what he wanted for lunch. Grandson answered wings, so Hooters being the closest wing place with a bathroom for tending to hurt knee, that's where they went. Needless to say waitresses made big deal of 3-year-old with hurt knee. Later mom asked WH should they had for lunch. Grandson says wings and they have big boobies too. Explaining was done. Marriage survives. I was a coach at the high school I taught at. I promised the team that I would go to a professional tryout if they won their district. They won out and I kept up my end of the deal but had to take my kids since the wife was working. The wife absolutely hates me throwing because of past shoulder surgeries. Anyway, I ended up catching the scout's eyes and threw a long session. Found out after the fact that I was throwing near 100 miles per hour. Told the kids I would get them pizza if they didn't tell mom. The little brats told her the second we walked in the door. All the scouts left voicemails ruining the secret anyway, and it led to a cup of coffee at the major league level. Not a dad, but this story is about mine. When I was about 5 I really wanted to shave my legs like a big girl. So one night, I'm taking a bath and I grabbed mom's razor, started shaving, ended up slicing chunks of skin out of my shins. Like, I still have dents in my shins from this almost 20 years later. Anyway, I'm freaking out because I know I'll be in trouble if mom finds out. Enter dad. He came in to check on me as parents do, and finds me crying in blood red bath water. I immediately beg him not to tell mom as I explain what I did. He says okay, gets me out of the tub, bandages my legs, and never tells mom. She didn't find out until I was 13 and she was teaching me how to shave and I told her the story. Thanks dad. Mine is more of a don't tell your dad moment. My husband is the overprotective one, and my boys are, well, boys. They're twins, and raise hell on a regular basis. One of my husband's rules is no playing near the stairs. Any stairs. He's convinced that they will kill themselves playing. Enter the sled. We took the mattress from the spare bedroom and put it at the bottom of the stairs. Upright. Then took one of the plastic sleds you get in the winter for snow, and slid down the stairs for an afternoon. The boys got a kick out of sliding down and hitting their face into the mattress to stop. Yes, they wore helmets. And yes, we were careful. The deal was, they didn't tell dad, and then none of us got in trouble. So far, so good. Obligatory not a dad, but a story about my dad. During a particularly snowy winter, my dad took my brother and I out into the garden to make snowmen and igloos. We had been strictly instructed by mum before she left for the shops to have no snowball fights. She was worried about stones from the recently resurfaced drive getting embedded in one and injuring someone. Of course, pushing each other over into snowdrifts quickly escalated into all-out war, and we were soon hurling snowballs at each other. My dad whipped one at me just as I dodged for it to go sailing past, straight through the glass in the living room window. Dad called a buddy who was a glazier to haul out and get it fixed. We were each promised a raise in our allowance, never to tell mum, with the promise of a bonus that if she ever found out, it would be one of us, not dad. That broke the window. My husband took my 6-year-old son to see Grown Ups the movie and thought I would not find out. Obligatory not a dad. And I realize this isn't huge, but often if I'm off out he'll slip me a cute 20 to get drunk with behind my mother's back as I'm on the way out the door. He's a stand-up father and actively wants me to go out, have fun and enjoy myself because he remembers what it was like growing up. He's always telling me stories about nights out and traveling with his mates back in the 80s. I'm a son, but I've got a story to share for my dad. When I was around 14 we went camping with my younger brother. I farted. Then my brother farted louder. Turns out that beans plus hiking led to noisy farts. Dad hears this, shakes his head and lets one loose so loud and long that I'm pretty sure a flock of birds flew away. A fart epic enough that he was winded afterward. That he turns to the two of us and says don't tell mom, then keeps hiking along. A month ago, I took my 4-year-old to Walmart for something real quick. He asked for a toy. I said, not today. He hid behind the big tower of balls. As I walked around to get him, he was gone. We were in the far back corner of the store. I found an employee as quickly as possible. Told them I lost my kid, all while yelling his name really loud, looking like a crazy person. After 1 minute I walked to the front and an employee was walking him back into the store. I calmly scolded him and never told my wife. He goes inside the cart now, always. When I was about 14 years old, my parents were recently divorced and I wanted to live with my dad since I thought it would be better, read, do whatever I want. He recently had a cable black box installed for the living room TV. He explained to me that it got adult channels on it. I'm not saying you can't watch them, just use your own discretion. I took that as code for the love God please don't let me walk in on you. It was actually the worst year of my life and ultimately he was using me as leverage against my mom in the divorce. He just put up this facade that we could be two carefree guys with no women to tell us what to do, but it was only about power, control, and revenge over his ex-wife. Probably not the light-hearted story this thread wants to attract. Lol. My dad used to take us for bike rides. He borrowed my mum's old Schul Huffy without asking. On this particular bike ride he took his cat walking a little too far. He completely ducked up the back of the bike, and it didn't look much like a Huffy anymore. We both agreed not to tell my mum, and he snuck it back into the garage at the end of the bike ride. My mum noticed that we were back home, and asked us if we would like to go on another bike ride. This time she wanted to join. We both replied no, we are tired, because we didn't want her to go grab her bike and find out it was completely ducked. But she insisted. She started walking to the garage to grab her bike, but my dad had stopped her dead in her tracks. And right then and there I witnessed the saddest little confession. I pooed in a bag while my dad held it, so I was about 9 or so, and I really needed the toilet. My brother had been in there for half an hour or so and knew I wanted in cause I banged on the door for ages. But he was a D. Cue my panicked brain saying, oh no, here goes. What happens? Where do I go? By this point my dad was waiting around with me trying to get my brother to hurry up to no avail. It was coming. I ran to the back door, thinking I should poop outside. Smart, right? Then I realized the neighbors would see me. So I just dropped my pajamas and started pooping right by the back door inside. Lightning Dad grabs a plastic bag, thankfully one without holes in, holds it under me at arm's length, collects the contents, and is off out the front door like a rocket to take his new package to the nearest dog poop bin. As far as we're both concerned, it didn't happen. We laughed about it a few years later on holiday, and then not long after that we laughed about it with my mum. We're a really close family with terrible senses of humor, and this is just a hilarious moment to us now. D. When I was living with my parents, I came home steaming drunk and pissed against the wall outside the bathroom. Dad took the blame like a ducking hero. So my brother-in-law was home. He was goofing around with a rifle, and didn't realize that it was loaded until he leaned back in his chair and shot the computer. His dad went and put the computer in the attic. Last summer, we were cleaning the attic and found the computer. It still had the bullet lodged in the backside of the case. My dad was always big into RC airplanes. One day he was doing something with it on the kitchen table, and the propeller went full blast and completely ruined the part of the tablecloth that hangs over the edge of the table. He spun the tablecloth 180 degrees so the ruined side was against the wall and out of sight. Mom obviously eventually noticed. When I was a little kid, my dad sat me on the kitchen counter and got 3 plates out of the cupboard. It was a dull day I guess, so he tried to entertain me. He started juggling them very well, then dropped one and smashed all 3. We quickly hid the evidence in the wheelie bin outside and he crouched down and said, if your mum asks, just say you never saw them, Angel. So my mum comes home. Come dinner she notices our plate department is short. She asks where they are. My father says he doesn't know. She asks me and I say there's some broken plates in the bin outside, but I haven't seen the ones you're looking for. I tried my best, Dad. Sorry. Back in the HS when I was selling weed, I got in with the wrong guys and basically got robbed by them with my friend. They wanted more money and figured out all of my details including where I lived. They were texting me all day telling me that they were gonna run up in my house and duck me up. I was obviously freaking out all day and my dad could see it on my face. The next morning I received this text from him. Hey, I saw the worry on your face yesterday so I read through your texts. Sorry, your dad's got to keep his son safe. I know this must be incredibly scary. Let me know how I can help. No matter what it is. Whether it's money, police, etc. We can figure it out. No matter what, I can help. This will freak mom out so this can be our secret. Stay safe this morning and give me a call. Love. Dad. He helped me out so much that day and never told mom. We're tasted. Aforementioned wife mother here. My husband was out in the car at night coming home with our daughter when they accidentally hit a wallaby that ran between them and the car in front. As anyone who has sadly hit one will tell you, it's very rarely that either the car or the wallaby come out of the whole thing unscathed. This one got its revenge in death because it smashed the front bumper of the car. They decided to use black tape to hold it together and there a conspiracy of silence was born. I don't drive so I didn't notice anything was wrong until my daughter asks me if I know where the roll of black tape was. I said I had no idea and asked her what black tape was she talking about. She said it was the tape Dad used on the car. Then she got that look that means they know they are about to get busted. Meanwhile I was joining the dots of the red flags of this tale while walking out the door to work out what the hell had happened to the car. I wasn't disappointed. Naturally there was a robust discussion about the events of that night and they relented and spilled the beans.